All right, everyone. Here we are, another week of the B.E.A.M stream. B.E.A.M standing for Broadcast Examination of Art and Media. And the current topic of conversation is, of course, Marvel Studios' Loki. Today we'll be going over episodes 5 and 6 of Marvel Studios' Loki. I'm Leonard. I'm joined by Darius, Mo,
Greetings from Asbury Park,
and Anna. So we're going to be your host for today, and we're going to chat about what we love, what we hate, and the series overall. So without further ado, thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you guys for watching the rewatches and sharing and interacting today on our stream. So we appreciate that very much. And so now I will get into a quick recap of episode 5 of Loki, Journey into Mystery. So we start out with a very cool visual fly-through of the TVA, which transitions into a flyover of the wasteland or the void at the end of time, accompanied by some very cool, ominous, badass music. We see Loki waking up from getting pruned, and he's looking up at 3 Loki variants. The situation he is in is quickly summed up by classic Loki saying, "This is the void, that's Eliath, and we're his lunch." So basically, they're going to get out of here. So we skip to Sylvie, who's standing over Judge Renslayer and attempting to get answers. And, she explains the situation very briefly, saying, when they prune a branch of reality, it's impossible to destroy all of the matter. So it's moved to a place on the timeline where it won't continue to grow. And so that's exactly the situation we've been dealing with the last episode, where, Mobius and Loki has been pruned. So she states that nothing ever comes back from there, and she asks Sylvie to trust her, which is, of course, we find out that's a little bit of a ruse. We get back to the 5 Lokis rushing hurriedly away from Elias. The fresh Loki to the fray is in scramble mode, trying to, figure out the situation and think of a way to leave. While the other Lokis, they've already accepted their fate, and they're content to stay in the void. Our Loki, I'm going to call him Sacred Loki, ask, why are there so many Lokis there? And the answer is because Loki survived. That's just what they do. So pretty cool. So on the way to the hideout where the Lokis have been living, we get glimpses of the wasteland vista, and it contains various Easter eggs from, pruned timelines, such as giant Yellow Jacket helmet and the Thanos copter. And when we get near the Loki hideout, we see a buried Mjolnir, and we see it being sought after by Throg, or Frog Thor, as people have been calling him. And then we get a glimpse of the Hideaway's throne room. Back at the TVA, Renslayer is stalling Sylvie until Minutemen arrive in ambush. And in order to escape, Sylvie prunes herself. Next, we see the Loki sitting around, boastful Loki telling a lie, as Lokis do, about how he obtained all of the Infinity Stones. And he gets called out by Alligator Loki. And then we hear classic Loki's story, which is very very intriguing, about tricking Thanos and removing himself from the equation, and how he got arrested by the TVA for being lonely and trying to reinsert himself into the timeline. They didn't raise a toast. Everybody's drinking wine except for Kid Loki, who drinks some High C Ecto Cooler, which I absolutely loved. Sacred Timeline, Loki decides he's not content with sitting around and sharing stories, and he enthusiastically shares that he's going back to TVA and they could all kill Alaya together, which is met by thunderous laughter. But Loki sets off, and he's immediately met upon trying to exit by more Lokis. So we then see Sylvie waking up in the void, and she's immediately pursued by Alioth, and they have a brief moment where she actually connects and finds out that her abilities to enchant are compatible with the raging tempest. And then she's scooped up by Agent Mobius in a pizza car. Back in the highlight, it's revealed that boastful Loki, in a coup attempt, invited President Loki and his Loki army to the Loki hideout, and is double crossed by President Loki, who is double crossed by his Loki army, and an all-out Loki scrum occurs. If that's not confusing enough. During the scrum, Sacred, Classic Kid, and Alligator Loki escape through a portal made by Classic Loki, who then curses all Lokis because by nature they are devious and incapable of change. And meanwhile, our Loki insists that Sylvie is different and is worth risking everything for. We see Sylvie and Moby chit chat about righting wrong while finding a way out of their predicament away from Alioth. Next, the valiant Lokis walk to confront Alioth, and when they witness the entire battleship get consumed, they question their plan. Right on time, Sylvie and Mobius show up, and everyone gets acquainted. Sylvie scoffs at their plan and informs everyone that she's going to enchant the Tempest. So then we see Renslayer speaking with Hunter B-15 and displays her resolve to find out who's behind the TVA and uphold its values. Loki and Sylvie have more bonding time before facing Alioth. Mobius then heads back to the TVA with the temp pad that Sylvie absconded with, and then we just see the final showdown of the episode, in which in order to distract the Beast, the Tempest, Classic Loki creates a replica of Asgard and sacrifices himself, while Sylvie and Loki combine to enchant Alioth and reveal their final destination. Whew. So that's that. Yeah, a lot to unpack in that episode. So let's go ahead and start. Favorite moment, Darius. What's your favorite moment from that episode? Let's do it.
There's actually a couple. One being the obvious, seeing Richard Grant as what we would think of as classic Loki, as we're calling him now. Because I'm just thinking, I was like, it's seeing him in his final moments, create Asgard and everything. I was like, okay, that is just a breathtaking moment. But I keep thinking in my brain, what if he had had a chance to play Loki from the beginning? And I can't stop thinking how the MCU may have evolved, how fandom may have evolved, how all the fan fiction, whatever may have evolved, things like that. So just watching him in action just has been a wonderful moment. But also seeing Frog Thor pop up, because I'm a huge fan of the Walt Simonson run of Thor. One of, if not the absolute greatest comic runs ever in history. And so, yeah, when Thor got turned into a frog and he had to ribbit through New York sewers, I was like, oh, they actually captured him. And then I was like, okay, they got an alligator version of Loki. Like, okay, that's a little kind of a bit of a callback to that a little bit. And so, yeah, seeing those little bits of those have really grabbed me for a bit. So, and I'll stop because I'll talk forever if I keep. So go ahead.
All right, Anna, we'll go to you now.
Definitely. I feel it's like, I'm going to be basic. Definitely. I've been calling him OG Loki. That's what I've been calling him. Not classic Loki, but OG Loki. Watching him raise Asgard to a rendition / sampled song using Ride of the Valkyries by Wagner. Like, done. Like that was it. The show's over for me. Like I didn't need anything else. That was it.
Nice. Mo?
I think actually that's going to be the consensus. That's the show stealing scene of the episode. But if we wanted to pick actually like a close second to that, for me it was the return of Mobius. Even though we in the previous episode knew that the pruning process wasn't exactly what we thought it was, which was people being erased from existence. They're actually being transported to another location to then be, basically it's a waiting room for them to be completely taken from the timeline.
It's not immediate.
It's not immediate. Bureaucracy. That's what. Hey, bureaucracy at its finest. And so to have that Mobius scene was, it's one of those things where you're just sort of like, his chemistry with Tom Hiddleston, has made the show, and I think having him return is this sort of this, and I'm by no stretch an Owen Wilson fan, by no stretch, but this show has made me a fan. This show has made me actually, I'm just like, there's Mobius. Yeah, he's back. I did have actually that moment, and then also the as they're getting ready, as Sylvie and Loki are getting ready to face off against Eliath. You get the scene where Loki is gonna, Mobius extends his hand and says, hey, good luck or whatever, and Loki comes in for a hug and hugs him, and that's. It shows the character growth. It shows that he does actually respect and actually appreciate this person. To which, because Marvel never misses a beat or a moment to add humor into it, he hugs him and he looks over at Sylvie and says, "You're still my favorite." So yeah, I mean that this episode was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah, so piggybacking on that, if we look back, since 2012, we got a lot of Loki, and people were like, well, are there any other villains that are going to be good besides Loki? And Loki was the favorite villain, and there we go. In Loki's own show, he's trumped by Sylvie. So it's pretty. Yeah, I think that's the audience speaking. Also, you're my favorite because they've been loving Sylvie. There's been posts. She's been trending since episode 2. So great addition. And yeah, so seeing Loki. Using the word
sacred
Loki, using the word friend multiple times. It seems subtle, but it really isn't. It's pretty deep for that character's arc. So
and I know I've heard the complaint from a couple of people that they're like, this seems like a quick amount of growth in the short amount of time. If you're thinking in respects to 2012 at the beginning of the show to 6 episodes in.
Mm-hmm.
But also, what you have to remember is that the TVA, the time works very, very differently, and so he has been basically in this place, and. There's always going to be cuts in, obviously, for storytelling purposes, meaning you're not going to see Loki wake up in the morning and brush his teeth and go get coffee. And like there are parts of this that are chopped up in storytelling that's going to tell you. So for all we know, this could have taken place over a span of several weeks. The episodes obviously make it feel like it's just actually bam, 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 bam.
Right.
Well,
but yeah.
Yeah, Marvel gives us, Loki says it himself, I think in episode 4, where he's like, I don't know how long it's been. I don't know how long I've been in the TVA. I don't know how long ago New York was. And that's their little throwaway of like, Yeah, we're not gonna timey-wimey. We're gonna some time has passed. Time has passed.
Time has passed for character growth, and character growth needs to happen
And
for
that's
this.
it. They gave it to us. They say, yeah, don't complain. Like,
Yeah, just but people, you know, I mean, but that's the way it is. People will complain, and people will,
of course.
you know. I do also want to make one quick other shout out with when it comes to the Marvel shows and the Marvel cinematic universe, everything going that's been going on so far. They are heavily. I feel like they've done a course correction when it comes to their female characters, and I am all for it all day, every day. I mean, if you think about actually WandaVision, and obviously Wanda and you know, Wanda being the character that she is and as powerful as she is, and adding Agatha as a fan favorite. People absolutely gravitated to Falcon and the Winter Soldier with having you know, introducing the Power Broker and also actually Valentina as well. You get and now this actually you have Sylvie in this, and you have actually Ravonna as well. You have all these
Don't
amazing.
forget my girl, Wunmi, B20.
Yes.
B15 is B15.
It's 15. It's 15.
I've
It's
been
okay, though.
the actress's name is Wunmi Masaku, and she's
Yeah.
from Lovecraft Country, so I just call her Wunmi or wife. That's it. Like
Chef's Kiss.
Yeah.
All of them, every single one of those. It's just amazing, and everything moving forward as well. Everything on their slate, you're seeing a very strong presence of women in the Marvel universe, and it's amazing. It's just actually, so shout out to them for doing this, because I mean I'm all for it all day, every day.
If I recall correctly, I think the Marvels started filming this week in England, I think.
The Marvels.
The Marvels,
The
the Captain Marvel sequel /
Oh yeah.
All three of them, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Really? That started. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait for that also. There's a lot of power there between characters introduced. Not to digress too much, but yeah, and shout out to Miss Minutes also. I mean,
Miss Minutes,
the only character that really knows what's going on.
Strong. We love you.
But I love that they took this character that so when I first watched it, all I could think of was Mr. DNA from Jurassic Park, where he like shows up and he's like, I'm a DNA strand and I'm going to show you how dinosaurs are made. Like that was all I could think of. I think they were going for that and the Let's All Go to the Movies, the cartoon.
Right.
And they've taken her, and when she starts talking to them about she's very ominous, and I love that Disney did that. That like slowly, like at first you're like, oh, she's just like a cute AI, like, you know, whatever. Right. And then as it goes forward, you're like, oh no, there's something wrong with her. I don't like this anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
You see those expressions and those, you know, especially in the eyes. And
Tara Strong is just incredible. Like she's just incredible. She puts so much into her voice work and everything that it's just like. You don't need a face, like the animated face is enough because she's giving you so much with her voice. So
that's true.
Big fan.
Yeah.
I wanted to piggyback because I didn't know we could choose a second moment. Mo chose a second moment. So my second moment, and it's not like a for me it was a moment that gave me a very visceral reaction. So OG Loki was the first where I was like, this is fantastic, this is amazing. And the second was Kid Loki, when he turned around and Loki was basically like, why should I be following this kid? And OG Loki is like, no, you want to follow this kid. And he's like, what was your big event? And he whips around and he's like, I killed Thor. Right. I was sitting at home on my couch and I literally had to stop and go, like what just happened? Like the acting again. That's what made me think of it, because we're talking about Tara and how great she is. This kid that they chose for Kid Loki carried it so well. Like, and I love it. I'm so happy with all of the actors and actresses they've chosen for the young Avenger characters that have been introduced. Because it's like it's not just a throwaway character. It's not just a throwaway line. It's not just all of their minor parts.
Yeah, they're building for something. Definitely. At least I hope Feige is.
Yeah, I hope.
Yeah, I think it seems like there's way too many seeds in there for them not to take advantage of it. And I think that this episode does a great job of laying sort of like putting in the idea for what I would consider to be somebody who's a layman who doesn't follow comic books and maybe is a little bit of a sci-fi fan but doesn't understand sort of certain sci-fi concepts of multiple universes and stuff like that. This lays the groundwork for them to say, as a primer, to say, hey, this is what this sort of is, so you have an idea. Then when we start getting into it, you'll be able to go ahead and have at least an idea. You're not completely lost and saying, well, why are there two people of the same the same person here and over there? So for us as comic book fans, we've seen this, and this is actually just sort of there's this version of this character and this version of this character over here, and I think actually obviously Into the Spider-Verse was another great movie that actually also for general audiences to understand that concept. But if you're introducing it into the MCU and you're saying, hey, we're going to introduce it and we're going to tell it our way and do it our way, this is also a fantastic way of doing it. I did also want to, before I forget, get a shout out also to Natalie Holt, who did the soundtrack for this. Now, I'm a huge score fan. I love scores. What she's done with this is that there's so many different types of musical type going on, both classic and electronic and synth and stuff like that. There's so many of Celtic, like they add all into it that makes it perfect for the show, because just pretty much like the lettering of the Loki, the intro show, where it has the different lettering, the music is it's super eclectic. And it's just a phenomenal job. So like I said, I think actually the music works really well with this show.
I agree. I agree with that. And I mean, it's the beginning of this episode, and I definitely called that out, with that ominous music. You felt that, like, it's like, okay, it's about to go down. We know, that we're entering dangerous territory here, and we felt that through the music. So yeah, you're right to call out the score, because it's been great. I couldn't agree with you more, certainly.
I saw somebody on TikTok actually, and I'll send it to you after, Mo, but she basically the green theme that she created for Loki fits perfectly with the Avengers theme as a counterpart. Like, she started playing both of them. On one hand, the Avengers theme, and on the other hand, Loki's theme. And when she played them together, they're perfect counterparts to each other.
Wow.
So I saw that, and I got super excited too, because I'm a music kid. So I was like,
oh man, that's even better. That makes it even better. That's fantastic. I'm a score person, so actually
it makes such a big deal. It makes such a big difference. There've been a couple moments on this show and coming up in the next episode where the music is gone, and it is so evident when the music is gone. And so, like, when you've got this accompanying score that's so well done and does a lot of like classical music things where each character has a theme and each character has its own motif. So when you hear that music in the background, it just makes it so that your emotional reaction to whatever it is that's happening in the scene is heightened.
Yeah.
So.
I actually wanted to ask everybody this, just because I love hot takes.
Oh yeah. Here we go.
What was your least favorite? I have one actually, but I'm waiting for mine at the last. What's your least favorite about this episode, or least favorite scene, or least favorite whatever of this particular episode? Leonard?
Oh, you gonna start with me? I'm thinking that hey, it's all good. I guess there's a part of me that, looking at boastful Loki and that hammer, looks so cool, and I wanted to see more with it for some reason. So I don't know. I was a bit let down by that, and then also, yeah, we have to. I'm glad that they gave Alligator Loki his moment. I don't know, but there's something kind of off about him biting Loki's hand off so easily.
Yeah.
Or President Loki's hand off. So I don't know. I mean, if I had to choose anything, not to say that those are not terrible things, but if I had to choose something that was kind of lower for me, that's what I would choose.
Darius, what do you think?
I honestly can't think of anything that I actively disliked. Yeah, I'm serious. I'm having trouble thinking of anything. Usually, when I think of something that's the least favorite thing, it's usually when I'm having to think about the whole series. So ask me about the series, and I can probably give you a better answer, but not just yet.
Okay,
all right,
cool.
we'll revisit that at the end of next episode's recap. All right.
Yeah. Anna, what you got? You got anything? Wow. As she sips her coffee.
Oh boy, here we go.
Okay, so briefly, and this is just me, I would have really loved it if we had gotten more of Boastful Loki. I also really would have liked it if Boastful Loki hadn't been the one to betray the group. But that's just me and my beef with Marvel and Disney in general, with characters of color suddenly turning on the group and being the weak link. So that's an irritating point for me personally. But probably also I when he bit the hand off, I was thinking absolutely Luke Skywalker callback, by the way. Like that was where my brain went. It was just like it's gone. And he's like, I'm like, oh, okay, it's a Luke reference. That's cool. But yeah, in terms of hot takes, that's my hot take. We have so many Lokis to choose from, and it was the Black Loki that betrayed the group. Anyway, that's all I'll say.
I mean, those are fantastic, actually, and they. I will say all of them. I feel them to my core. I feel like Boastful Loki having. One of the first things as a cosplayer that I saw, I said, this bald guy is got this cool costume and this awesome hammer. This guy's gonna be it. And then I watched this episode and I'm like, oh, whatever. I thought he was gonna say, hey, this is a version of Thor's hammer that I got from him, or whatever the case, or I stole from, or I forged myself. Whatever the case is, you're hanging around with a hammer. It's a prop piece. It's what's the it's not exactly the what's the framing actually when you put something in a frame of a movie and then you come back to it later.
Chekhov's gun.
Chekhov's gun. Yeah, it's not so much. It's not so much that, but at the same time, you see him with this hammer, and you're just sort of like.
Yeah, the iconography of the hammer is extremely important.
Yes,
because
it's Loki with a hammer. Yeah. But if I had to pick one particular gripe, and this goes also back to probably everything up until this point, is these are the times where having a TV show versus a movie, even with a budget that Disney gives them, sometimes that's where you can sort of know that this is a TV show. And the reason I state that is the variants of Loki are all humanoid regular Lokis, with the exception of the alligator. But when they showed off in episode 2, hey, here are the variants that we've had to sort of prune. They showed this whole thing, and I'm just like, that would have been great. Show me show me a cartoon Loki. Show me any other kind of Loki that wasn't actually 3 other men and a alligator would have been fantastic. And that way you see the variation in Lokis. You would have been able to say, hey, look at all, it's all over the place. It runs the gamut. And because Lokis are survivors, but the they have these 3 Lokis, and then you have President Loki, which was everyone I feel was deceived by, because people thought that was sacred Loki turning the tables on someone. Come to find out, no, that was a completely different Loki, who is exactly like Tom Hiddleston. I mean, give him a mustache at least. Come on, give him the Star Trek evil goatee at least.
But my thing is I actually like that. Like, I actually like the fact that he was Tom Hiddleston meeting Tom Hiddleston. Like, it was very much like a Mirrorverse sort of thing where.
And I appreciate that. Had they given him at least one other distinguishing trait, because I feel like he walks in and he looks exactly like him, and I'm just sort of like, out of all the choices that you could have made aesthetically, you could have actually had him wearing a ponytail, a man bun, anything to make him distinctive from our Loki. But this Loki looks like our Loki almost exactly. So what's, it doesn't feel as compelling to look at them and look at that Loki and say, I wonder what his story is. Because I'll be honest, classic Loki, I was just like, I wonder what his story is. Kid Loki, I wonder what his like what would it look like to see his story. Even boastful Loki to an extent. But this guy, I feel like it's a copy paste of our Loki, so I don't really care. I mean, he lost his hand. What? No, I was gonna say, which by the way, I did see an image actually. Somebody compared it to something else. They compared it to Peter Pan.
Yeah.
They put the crocodile and Captain Hook.
Yeah, that works too. Yeah. Well, I was going to say my thing about that, though, is that there's, at least for me, and again, this is just my interpretation after watching this episode again 3 times, is that it was, there's an implication there that OG Loki is, it is Tom Hiddleston in the future, because he looks at, of the Lokis that are Sacred Loki is gathered around in that fire, he looks at the 3 of them, and of them he looks at him and goes, so what happened? Did we get, like, we got away? How did you get away from Thanos? Like it's there's the implication that Richard E. Grant is what our Loki will look like when he gets older. So and
I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that piece. Like I would say, I'm just thinking about.
No, President I know.
Loki. Yeah, President Loki was one I was like,
I get it. It's a fair gripe. Give him the little handlebar mustache or something.
That's all I want. Give me a mirror Star Trek goatee. That's all I want. You got regular Spock, and I'm sorry, Leonard. We're going into Star Trek territory. You got regular Spock, and you got mirror Spock, and he's got a goatee. That's how you know they're evil. That's the way it works.
All right. Well, any other singular point before we move on to our review of this episode 5? Anything that sticks out? Or we can just get into our review now and you can point it out then.
I did see a little thing again on, I think it was either on Instagram or Tumblr that I thought was kind of great, that referenced back to episode 4, where we see the young Sylvie, who we are assuming is young Sylvie. The scene that she's reenacting on the steps of the palace in Asgard. I
saw that.
It's she's holding a dragon and a Valkyrie, and she's like, and then the dragon swooped over the palace, and the Valkyrie stopped and like defeated the dragon. And this is when the TVA comes to pick her up. It mirrors exactly the scene with OG Loki. And the song that is playing that's referenced, the is Ride of the Valkyries. So it's like a little Easter egg within an Easter egg, calling back to that opening in episode 4. So
that's cool. Thanks for pointing that out. I like that. All right, so let's go on to our review. Let's go ahead and start with Mo. Our review of this episode. What would you give it letter grade?
I think I'd give it an A-, and that's because of my minor gripe about the variants. Is like this show sold me on variant timelines and variant versions of characters. I knew that I wasn't going to get a variant version of, say, for example, of Thor or Captain America. I got that. I mean, that blows the budget right there when you're trying to get other actors back in and do a scene and stuff like that, even if it's just a cameo scene. But since with the actors that you do have there, I would have liked to have seen a more of a variety of it. Plus, I think actually the implication of this particular show, whether good or bad, I mean, I don't really have a critique of it, is that Sylvie seems to be the only female Loki. Like and with an infinite number of timelines, it seems like it's just sort of like, so she's the only female Loki, in an infinite timeline that's out there, or maybe or just the one that wasn't pruned, the one that got away.
Yeah.
But yeah, A- for me.
All right, Anna.
I'm gonna piggyback on here. A-. It was a very satisfying episode, even with all of the little things, mostly because it felt like there were so many Easter eggs. There were so many Easter eggs there for the comic book reader. And you know, we talk about these, and on previous episodes that I was just a commentator on and not a panelist, basically, we have this conversation. You guys have had this conversation about comic book readers versus the layman. You know, my mom is tuning into this show. She's been watching all of the Marvel shows. She's down in Miami with my dad. And my dad used to read Thor comics when he lived in Jamaica. It was not like a big part of his life. He moved on from that. But my mom, I don't think, has ever picked up a comic book. So her take on these things is very often just the story. It's very often just what's presented in front of her. There's not a lot of like, she gets these references. And this episode felt like, I see you, we see you, thank you, you know, thank you for being on this ride with us. Thank you for, here's a Thanos copter. You know, because I died when I saw the Thanos copter.
Oh my gosh,
I
yeah,
lost my
me too.
mind. I was like, what? And so it felt very kind in a way that the other shows, WandaVision did it a little, but WandaVision was also buried in this mystery of what was happening. Falcon and the Winter Soldier did not give us that much in terms of Easter eggs and little like because there's a meta conversation happening with the people who produce direct these with the fans, and this felt like a thank you episode. This felt like a, you know, here are all these things, here are all these cool scenes, and we're going to give you just the coolest scene so far to demonstrate Loki's true power and raise Asgard. So,
all right,
right,
Darius.
I give it an A, and because there's one thing that I'm both happy and slightly disappointed in at the same time. Because there's this one bit where Loki and Sylvie are sitting there and they're watching OG Loki or Plastic Loki, whatever, pull off this illusion, and he basically says, "What's this implication?" It's like, it's that we are stronger than we realize, and that this episode makes you think, what if Loki had actually been able to do all of this during the previous films? And it was like, okay, I really wish we could have seen that more potential. And it's realized in this one episode, but it makes you just go back up and think, you know, we've been like watching these for endless films and TV shows. What if we actually had that? So the episode makes me happy and sad at the same time, and gives me reason to have different commentary when we get to the final episode. But I give it an A just for right now.
Okay. Yeah, I also give it an A. And, you know, it's things that we touched on. The very smooth transition to the concept of the multiverse, which has, of course, major implications. We're comfortable, just like Sacred Loki. Oh, there's an alligator version of me. I don't sweat it too much. You know, it's just like, we're the same way. Okay, cool. That's funny. In fact, let's go ahead and meme it all week. You know, we got you know,
I'm not mad.
You know,
like,
it's all good. We're comfortable, right? So definitely things like that. You know, we grow to appreciate, and yes, you know, you guys mentioned it. That end cap with OG Loki manifesting Asgard is probably one of the most awesome moments in the MCU history. Period. That was cool. I was just sitting back. Wow, this guy, you know, very enjoyable to watch. So yeah, definitely earns an A from me. All right, so Mo, let's get a recap of episode 6, For All Time, Always.
All right, so Episode 6 can be summed up, and I think actually very, very succinctly by saying this is the episode in which, if you've seen, because this is the first thing I thought of, and when I went into the internet, it seems everybody else thought the same thing. This is in the Matrix Reloaded scene, where Neo meets the architect. This is the scene in which. This is exactly that. It is almost beat for beat exactly that. So, but we will go ahead and expand a little bit more. So we find ourselves with Loki and Sylvie. They've finally arrived at the Citadel at the end of time, and it is on this destroyed asteroid, where you start off the episode and you can hear during the logo run all these little sound bites of different MCU movies over the course of the history of the MCU. And that includes actually that when you start seeing actually everything that's sort of unfolded over time up until the Big Bang, and then actually again it almost like restarting, and that's part of the sacred timeline. So we start off with Sylvie and Loki, who walk up to the door. Sylvie is, taking a moment actually, because this is basically her life's work has been to get to this point, to be able to go ahead and take down whoever destroyed her life, whoever the top person is. To reference another Keanu Reeves movie, this is her, John Wick. I'm coming over to take out the main guy who killed my dog. Spoiler for anybody who hasn't seen John Wick. But anyway, so they arrive. Loki is trying to sort of feel her out. She's also saying, "Hey, are you going to stop me? Are you going to try to convince me otherwise?" He's like, "Nope. You do what you got to do." And so, as she's still working herself to it, the door opens. They walk in. They're looking around. They're they trying to figure out, obviously get their bearings and prepare them. They're braced for whatever may come to them. And then something that probably is taken out of a horror scene, Miss Minutes pops up suddenly. You have the music spike. Miss Minutes, and at that point you think to yourself, that's it. Miss Minutes is the villain. We knew it from the beginning. Miss Minutes was the villain, and so Miss Minutes is just like, hey, you guys made it. Hey, how about if I propose to you a perfect life where you guys can go ahead and do it? She refers to her boss as he who remains. And so she tries, she basically proposes to them, giving them the perfect life, giving Loki the life where he not only defeats the Avengers, but gets the Infinity Stone, defeats Thanos, and has the world, as his oyster. Miss Minutes also offers to Sylvie, hey, what if I can go ahead and actually, all you'll have is happy memories, and you guys can live in the same timeline. And so that gives them a little bit of pause. Sylvie first calls out and says, that's a lie. That's not going to happen. And, Loki says, well, we're not playing in this hamster wheel anymore. We've gotten to this point on our own free will. To which Miss Minutes is just sort of like, yeah, good luck with that. And disappears. It brings us back over to the TVA, to Renslayer, who is actually rifling through some paperwork. Miss Minutes pops up and gives her some files. And Ravonna is just sort of like, why did it take so long? What the heck? And she's just like, well, I had to go take care of some other stuff. And she looks at the files and she's like, this is not what I asked for. And Miss Minutes is like, no, but that's actually, you're going to find that more useful. That's what he wants you to have. And then she leaves as well. She disappears. We go back over to Loki and to Sylvie, who, again, they're braced for whatever's coming. They walk into another room. There's some statues. This is a very dark, there's a foreboding feeling. And then, they ponder if this is something in which there is no top person, that this is actually just something that somebody did actually do and start, and then it just sort of became its own creature and its own sort of entity. But that is not the case, because then they hear a door and an elevator behind them, and they brace themselves to find this man clad in purple, eating an apple, musing to himself how there's two of them, two Lokis in the same room. And so, he doesn't seem like he's threatened. He doesn't seem like he is scared or concerned. He invites them in. He's like, hey, let's come in with me, talk to me. Let's go ahead and actually talk this over. So they go into the elevator. And Loki remarks, he's like, "You're just a man," and this person says, "Yeah, I mean, I hope you're not disappointed, but yeah, I'm just a guy and whatever." Sylvie then attempts to kill him, twice, but every time he's one step ahead of her and shifts out of the way and shifts to another position in the elevator, where every time she goes for a jab or a stab, he's gone. Then he disappears from the elevator. The elevator arrives on the floor where they're heading to. He invites them into his office and asks them to sit so he can go ahead and talk to them. Meanwhile, back at the TVA, we get back to Ravonna, and Ravonna is in her office. Here's a knock on her door. Wants to find out, hey, what's going on? I was told to leave me alone. Mobius walks in, and Mobius is like, well, that was the last person you probably expected to see. They have a conversation back and forth, how they basically talk about how they one betrayed the other. And Mobius tries to appeal to her and say, hey, this is not right what we're doing. We're pruning all these timelines for something it's built on a lie. We're all variants. We were all stolen from our timelines. But Ravonna seems so entrenched in this philosophy and in this world that she doesn't want to see anything. She thinks that there's a bigger purpose for it, and that she doesn't want to give up the dream. So she sets up her panel to go ahead and actually go somewhere. Mobius tries to stop her, or tries poorly and fails miserably to stop her. She tells, he basically says, okay, well, if you're going to prune me. And she doesn't. She leaves. She goes into the store, and before she leaves, he asks, where are you going? And she says to go find free will, because part of their conversation was, part of Mobius's argument was, well, free will, we shouldn't be taking people's free will. We shouldn't prune people just because we think this is going to mess with the timeline. She goes and disappears. Now we get to the meat of this actual episode, where we're introduced to this character who basically tells Loki and Sylvie that he is the architect of everything that's happening and why it's in place. He explains to them, actually, that, you guys are here because I want you to be here, because I've actually sort of set this up in place. They are completely like, no, that's not true. We came here on our own. We came of our own free will. And he's just like, no, it's not. And Sylvie tries again to stab at him, and he's just like, you know what? I'll show you right now. And he pulls out a printout with their conversation up until this point and everything they're going to say afterwards. And so he informs them, I know everything that's happening. And that's the reason why every time you try to strike at me, I'm always out of the way. And it's not like a case where as you're striking me, I'm pressing the button. It's pre-programmed. I'm going to move to wherever I think you're going to strike, wherever I know you guys are going to strike to. So he asked them to sit, and he basically explains to them the story of the TVA, or where it comes from, and who he is. And he explains, and all barring this, by the way, this is not introducing him by name. There's no name given to him in this episode. He explains how the TVA came about, where basically there were, in the 31st century, he was a scientist, and he just, or a scientist discovered there were worlds upon worlds. He's talking about him, worlds upon worlds, universes upon universes. He makes first contact with another universe, and other universes have been also doing, other versions of him have been doing the same thing. And they sort of first make contact with each other. And at first it's super peaceful, and everybody's helping each other and working with each other. They share technologies to help each other's realities. But just as there are people who are benevolent, there are also versions of him who are not as benevolent. So they started the multi-universe war. Now, in the after effect of this war, no, you're fine. All of these different wars and different timelines being, sort of entangled, creates Alioth, this entity that basically destroys everything that comes through it, that is has been created because of all these branching timelines. So our scientist takes control of Goliath and basically, in essence, creates TVA, gets rid of all the other timelines, all the other branching timelines that could happen, and he basically creates TVA in the hopes that he can branch off enough timelines where no other versions or potential versions of him can come to exist. So he is the only one who can and we can keep that order. And so what he proposes to Sylvie and Loki is that he's just like, you know what, we can do one of two things. You can go ahead and kill me, which basically leaves the vacuum for somebody else to come in, somebody possibly worse, or you guys can take over. And so Loki asked him, he's like, so what? So basically you just want to give up all this power? And he's just like, listen, I've been doing this for way too long. I'm older than I've lived millions of lifetimes. I'm done. I can go ahead and sit back. You guys want to take it over and go ahead and actually keep my life's work going. Sylvie the entire time feels like this is a lie. She feels like this is a deception by this person to keep them in check. And so a fight ensues between her and Loki, where Loki is trying to tell her, wait, let's stop for a second, because it gets to a point where after he's proposed to them what their choices are, it gets to the point where they're in a part of the timeline where everything he's predicted up to is done. So they've crossed the threshold of the unknown, where we don't know what's going to happen next, what choices are going to happen next. And so as he says that even as right now, as we speak, there's branching timelines right now because of the fact of the inaction. Sylvie and Loki spar, for a little bit. Loki's trying to convince Sylvie to just wait and just not necessarily, try to kill him. Just go ahead and wait. Let's try to think through it. Sylvie is dead set on making sure that she kills him. She goes ahead and actually, she's able to get Loki actually on the ropes, and then at one point before actually she gives a killing blow, Loki intercedes and stops her again, and basically professes to her that he just wants her to be okay. He's like, I don't care about ruling, I don't care about being on top of anything, I just want you to be okay. They share a kiss, and then Sylvie grabs our scientist's little device, kicks Loki into a door that sends him back to the TVA, and then proceeds to kill our scientist. Scientist basically says to her, well, I mean, this is everything that happened before is going to happen again, the multiversal war, and then we're going to be back to where we are right now, and I'm going to exist again, so I guess I'll see you soon. Loki lands in the TVA. At first he's sort of mopey, but then he goes and tries to find Morbius and basically tell him, hey, this is what happened, this is what's going on. To which, and to our surprise, Mobius says, are you an analyst? Who are you? Calm down. And doesn't recognize him. And then Loki notices that one of the statues now in the TVA, where before it was one of the space lizards, is now Kang, who is not named, but we all know based on the suit, it is Kang. And that's our episode, leading us into season 2.
Yeah, there's, I mean, for an episode where there wasn't a lot of settings, really, too, a lot goes on in that, as far as dialogue and explanation. And I guess to piggyback on your reference earlier in that scene from The Matrix, there's just a lot of stuff that can go woof. This is just over your head real quick. But I'm gonna just say it. I'm already intrigued, by Kang in this universe, and to me, it was very likable. We had this whole build-up, and you expect, this looming despot, that's has to be in control of everything Iron Fist, but this dude is he's laid back and
Wrong show. Iron Fist is a different show.
right. But yeah, he's very you know, yeah, you can tell he's very intelligent. He knows what he's doing, but you know, his demeanor is very, you know, loose. You know, he didn't have to be in control of the situation that he was in. Fine, kill me, take over, or let me do my thing, whatever. You know, so it's very interesting in that. What you got, Anna?
So I was watching this episode, Mo. I was watching this episode, and I was like, "Oh gosh, I'm real happy I'm gonna be on the on the stream because I can already tell I'm gonna be in the minority. This is my least favorite episode. I hated this episode. Hated it.
Wow.
All right, expound.
I know.
Hot
Here we go.
take.
Yeah, I know. No, listen, I was watching it. I'm like, Mo's loving this. I can feel it. I could feel it. Like it was 3 a.m. because what I did was I came home from work, slept for a couple hours, woke up at like 2.
That's commitment.
And watched it at 3, and I was like, anyway, to begin, okay, hold on. So to start, they start the episode with the Marvel logo playing all of the. It starts with "It's been a long, long time," which is automatic. Like you know, Bucky had the words. Like Bucky had the words to turn him into the Winter Soldier.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been a long, long time. Activates me.
Really?
Yes, because we haven't talked about this, but I have so many thoughts about Steve Rogers and his progression through the movies and then the last couple movies he was in. So that activated me. Then we hear all of the other characters like overlapping with each other. And I am just like, what is happening? Like, what is going on? Like, what are we doing here? I loved the Haunted Mansion. That was basically it. That was Haunted Mansion. They're walking through it. And I'm just expecting like the floor to start sinking and stuff. Miss Minutes, absolutely terrifying. There's also a TikTok trend right now that has Miss Minutes showing up to startle you, and I hate jump scare videos.
Oh man.
And it's great because I'm like watching it and I'm like I'm scrolling TikTok and it's like, you know, romanticize your life in 26 pictures. And it's like, I'm expecting it to be someone's like pictures to like, you know, soft alternative music or whatever. And then it's Miss Minutes. And she's like, hey y'all. And I'm like, I don't need this in my life. Disney, thank you. Okay. So I know that we were playing with time the whole show, but the time dilation and contraction of the upward rising action in this episode made me feel like I was going crazy. Like it was extremely slow at moments, almost purposefully, that felt like I was watching the seconds tick by, and then there were moments of action that felt like everything was sped up. Like it felt like when Loki and Sylvie are fighting, I felt like it was like extremely quick action especially in comparison to these moments of we're watching the little figures, which I loved. That was one thing that I thought was a really great device. Because they could have done flashbacks. I hate flashbacks. I hate flashbacks in anything. They could have done flashbacks, but instead they decided to give us this story, this Council of Reeds, basically, that's taking place with the little like figures. Yeah. But no, the pacing was off for me. The whole episode felt like it could have been 15 minutes. Like I don't think that we needed 37 minutes. But I will say that as much as I disliked it. Oh, and of course, we already know how I felt about the kiss.
Oh yeah. I will say
that. I watched that episode, and that was the first thing that crossed my mind. I said, "There's the ick factor for Anna. Yeah, there it is, right there. Right ick factor initiated.
100%. So you started by bringing up Steve Rogers. You ended with they're kissing, and I'm just like, okay, well, oh, and also I didn't know that there was a season 2. Like a bunch of people who watched this were like, oh yeah, it got announced like last week that they were coming back for season 2. I didn't know that. So when the episode ended, I was like, oh, I'm done with Marvel. Like, I'm just, that's it. It's over. And then they were like, season 2. I'm like, oh, thank God. But I will say, of all the things that I hated, Jonathan Majors was not one of them. Jonathan Majors' performance was absolutely phenomenal. And for me, breakout star, breakout performance. Tom, I've been talking about Tom on and off, the performance that he's given us, the face that he's given us, the emotions that he's given us. But this, he was fantastic. He was fantastic. And he brilliantly acted as a foil for himself, because forever going forward, when we meet the others that are out there, and in particular, I think it's, it's going to be Kang. It's going to be Kang. It's going to be the Warlord. It's going to be the Conqueror. He's provided us with a perfect mirror image of himself going forward, because in the same way that we know, for me, there's always this flip side of like comedy and tragedy. It's why comedic actors do so well in dramatic roles, and it's also why like people like Mark Hamill as the Joker works so well and is so iconic. You have this actor who's really great at doing this comedic, silly jester tragedy, because he's the despondent immortal. That's basically it. It's like he wants to be done. Like you can feel the desperation and the desire for this to be done, which is why he doesn't fight when Sylvie comes up with the sword. So you've got this tragic, sort of sad, like you can tell he wanted to help. It probably was not good, but he wanted to help. And now going forward, this actor will be transformed into Kang the Conqueror, easily one of the scariest, most powerful villains. And I just think it's great that they gave us this to look back on. Like, hopefully we'll see him soon. Hopefully we'll see him in Multiverse of Madness or whatever it is. And hopefully, I have no doubt that he'll be able to bring that gravitas and that sort of like, did you guys watch Lovecraft Country?
Yes.
I haven't yet. I have not.
Okay. Yeah, he's just fantastic. He's just an excellent actor, and I have no doubt that he'll deliver on this. And I have no doubt that when we get done with that and we're talking about it, we're going to look back and go, yeah, no, he was a completely different person.
Right.
So,
all right, Darius, what you got on this?
Well, oh boy, how am I going to follow Anna?
Sorry.
Right. It's all good.
This final episode, I enjoyed it because this whole show, only one thought has been running through my mind as the show has just progressed. This is the best Marvel version of Doctor Who I have ever seen in my life. This is it. This has been one big season of Doctor Who. And then when I watched it, I was like, it's just him and the Master just talking. And that's pretty much the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then they set it up. It's like, okay, if they're talking this much, there's going to be some serious-ish coming from the MCU. I can already tell Kang is going to just wreck. And the thing that I was hoping for one thing, but I'm glad they didn't do it. I was kind of hoping they would mention his very famous ancestor. They did not mention him at all. And so I'm like, okay, cool. Well, we'll save him. Good. But yeah, this basically does pretty much feel like, just the way the cinematography was done. A lot of the outside scenes are pretty similar to what a lot of the Doctor Who show has been like. Especially, the outside scenes when they're running through next to the train, and and they're running against the Olias thing, stuff like that. I'm very happy to see how they do it, but I'm also I was also thinking about one other show that the way they did Kang here, I keep thinking of. And I hate to mention the other company's character. I keep thinking about how the Arrowverse did the Monitor. This is what this version of Kang reminds me of.
Okay, I haven't seen it. Okay.
Oh, okay. Basically,
I have.
basically he kind of just whips out this book, and basically you're following this book about all these different things that are supposed to happen and progressively going on and on. And there's a similar demeanor that they have. I think more than I think you will kind of agree a little bit on that. How they're handled in a bit of a way here in this thing. I think that they are kind of inspired by that version of the Monitor for this version of Kang. I generally did enjoy it because, basically, this is basically the big setup. I mean, we've been talking all this whole time about multiverse, this variants that. We already know that both Doctor Strange and Spider-Man will be big slam bang fests talking about dealing with the implications of the multiverse going forward and how it's going to basically wreck things. And they've already said Tom Hiddleston will be in both Doctor Strange and probably Spider-Man at some point. So I expect.
Didn't hear about Spider-Man. Knew about Doctor Strange.
Yeah, I knew about Doctor Strange. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I had the impression he was going to be in both of them. But my bad. But yeah, he's so. I mean, basically, this is our set. Basically, Feige has said you need to be watching these shows if you're going to be watching the MCU films going forward. You need to watch this to have a good frame of reference of what's going to happen. So I did not mind the general conversation mode here. This is basically like, okay, this is what you've been waiting for. Off you go.
Right. That's my thing. Also, I feel like we've been wanting that segue that we didn't get with let's just say WandaVision, right? Yes, that's what we have here. Yeah. We literally see, the branches of the multiverse unfolding, and at this point, is everything canon now? Like everything, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Fox property,
Netflix.
I was gonna say the literal only cameo that I care about in terms of like who will be brought in is Charlie Cox from Daredevil. That's the only person that I didn't know that Tom was gonna be in Multiverse Madness. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like they could bring in anybody and I'd be like, that's fine. Like the only person that I am like, I need him to be brought in. It was Charlie Cox as Daredevil because he did such an incredible job with that character that anyway.
That was definitely
this now. So
that was a shining gem of the Netflix series. Definitely Daredevil was raw and it was great. So I agree. We'll see what they do with that. The thing about it is now, I mean, they can easily swap out actors at will.
Right.
Guess what? This is a branch in the timeline.
Funny that you say that because there was a interview recently with Mr. Feige, our Lord and Marvel savior, where he had stated something about Marvel not going forward with multi-picture contracts.
Yes, he did say that.
And that is exactly right. It frees them up from being able to say, hey, Tom Hiddleston wants more money. Okay, cool. Well, we only have this much, but if you want to walk, that's cool. Hey, you new guy, come on in. Actually, you're Loki now. You're the variant Loki that's actually we're gonna follow in this reality now, or we're gonna follow your reality now. So it's a smart move on their part. I think they learned their lessons with RDJ, and not that I'm saying that RDJ did anything wrong. RDJ was savvy and smart, and he did what he needed to do. And you know what? Kudos to him, man. Get paid, get your money.
Yep.
For me, I will say actually for this episode, you're absolutely right, Anna. I am on the opposite spectrum of this episode for it. And unlike episode 3's talky episode, this episode kept me more engaged just because of Jonathan Majors chewing the scenery like nobody's
Yep.
business. He took that like a tough piece of steak and chewed it and chewed it and chewed it some more.
Filet mignon
He
in
did.
his mouth.
You could see the teeth grinding like this, grinding it. You could see it as it was happening. And I think I will be curious to see. I can't foresee that he will play that same version of Kang in the next iteration, because obviously the whole point is to show him now it's going to be the
conqueror.
the conqueror. This is the scientist. This was the guy who basically was just like, hey, I'm just being pragmatic. I'm just trying to go ahead and actually say, I'm going to go ahead and straighten this stuff out and, make things what they are. And again, eccentric to the fact that if he's lived millions of different lifetimes, his eccentricities and his sort of like ticks sort of speaks to the fact that this is somebody that he's not crazy for the sense of being like, hey, I'm just crazy and I'm a mad person.
Right.
It's, you've lived so many lives and you've lived for so long, you are just sort of like, there's a little bit of unhinged, there's a bit of an unhinged nature.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will say actually this was my favorite of all the episodes. This one right here. Part of it was because it did sort of feed into my comic book fan of seeing Kang. Part of it was also the seeing the again, I love the philosophical part of it. That always grabs me. Is just like is free will really, do you really have free will?
Right.
Are you beholden to certain things that you cannot control? And your perception of free will is, oh, I can go ahead and get up and walk out and go out and walk out to the corner because I want to. But if there's cause and effect, and this is also covered in the Matrix, I'm bringing it up because it's relevant to this conversation. It's exactly the same conversations had in that movie. Cause and effect, free will, or actually free agency, all of that takes place in this conversation. And I got to say that even it's an unpopular opinion, but that scene in the Matrix is one of my favorite scenes in that trilogy. It's a talky scene, but I feel like it has layers of like I said, philosophical, sort of existential, ideas in there that are baked into the sci-fi show or the sci-fi movie. The same thing with this show. I will say I was a little annoyed with Sylvie, because although I can tell and I understand her plight, like she has a one-track mind. She's just like, this is what I need to do. I did also feel like she was completely and totally blinded to what was going on in front of her. And I feel like there was, and I'm not saying actually there was no right answer. There really was no right answer in that. If they had taken over for the TVA, then they become the villains that they were fighting against. If they kill him, then yes, you actually run the risk of having somebody come in who's way worse than the guy you've been dealing with. And that's actually what ends up happening. So you get to see it from Loki's eyes, because you get to see firsthand right before it cuts off that this timeline that he's in right now is now a different timeline. I did appreciate the fact that the scene before that scene where Loki goes to find Mobius, right before that, there is a scene between B-15 and Mobius where they just say, is he just going to let this do this? And it's just like, yeah, that scene takes place in the timeline that Loki ends up in.
Right.
It's made you, it makes you believe that this is the regular timeline you're looking at. No. Right off the bat, they switch it out for you, and they're just sort of like, oh, is he just going to go ahead and let this do this? And when they say this, they're saying, is he going to go ahead and do it? Meaning, actually, this is Kang saying,
it's established.
Just let it all go. Just let it all fly. So you have the polar opposite on one hand. You have the one Kang who wanted to make everything orderly and whatever, and then you have this other Kang who still has a TVA, who basically says, just let it fly.
Well, and there's this. So I am a big fan of. I'm a big fan of Anne Rice in general, but I'm a big fan of vampire literature, just because I feel like it's one of those like formats of telling stories that you get the immortals, right? Like you get immortal characters. And then it's like, do we want to live forever? Do you want to live forever? What are the implications of being able to see the future or the past in great clear detail? Are human beings meant, to go past our expiration date? And the scientist, you're right. There's a benevolence there that I don't believe he set out, and this is just my interpretation, obviously, of Jonathan Majors' performance, but I don't feel like this version was doing this for any other reason besides to stop the destruction and the pain and the death and the fighting. And so he was like, I just did this because this is the only way to have kept, once I got this timeline cleaned up, once I went back and cleaned up everything, this is the only way that I could see keeping the multiverse from happening again, like from keeping everything, from occurring again on this cycle of violence. And so then it's like, okay, so your heart was in the right place. Were your actions justified? Like the conversation with Mobius in episode 5 with Sylvie in the car, and Sylvie's like, oh yeah, stealing kids and killing people is true marks of a hero, like real heroic stuff. And you can see that Mobius is wrestling with what he's been doing, because again, it's order. It's the way that we stop bad things from happening.
And it's funny because it's actually somebody, I can't remember who it was that I heard say this, or maybe it was in one of the episodes. It's basically either you stop the existence of millions of people, or millions of people die.
Right.
So which would you prefer? Would you rather stop their existence? They never existed. So maybe there is an inherent sort of like, hey, they're not going to feel pain because they never existed.
Right.
That timeline stopped. Or do you let this chaos come in where all of these people will die and they probably will suffer as a result of that?
Right.
I feel like also one of the things actually, and I love the fact that Marvel can take advantage of this, because obviously they're bringing in stories from, from the Silver Age, Golden Age, Modern Age, but they're also bringing in stories from now. So one of the things that this does remind me of, at least when it comes to more current storylines, is the Council of Reeds.
Yeah.
And the Council of Reeds existing to the only reason they exist is to fix the problem of, what was it called? It's the they were trying to fix they called it something in the comic books, but it's basically it's almost like fix the problem of everything, or fix the problem of something. Like it was some kind of thing that they were trying to basically say, hey, we're going to fix everything by working this one equation of making sure we fix everything. And all of those Reeds decided, we're going to remove ourselves from our universe, and we're going to go ahead and be this brain trust that we're going to go ahead and actually go ahead and sort of make our decisions. The other thing, and that was from Jonathan Hickman. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing actually with this is the incursions. That's the other thing that I thought of the moment this multiverse thing happened. I was just sort of like, when he's explaining it and he's explaining about the war, I'm just like, that is exactly the incursions. That is exactly what happens in the Avengers book in gosh, what was the name of that story? Time's Up, or basically you have all of these alternate worlds crashing into each other, and you have heroes on, like, say for example, the 616 having to decide to either destroy a world or both worlds get destroyed, and they're having to go to other worlds and basically plant bombs and have them destroyed so that way they won't destroy each other. I love that, and I love the fact that in a way they've incorporated that, and I would love to see that they do incorporate that in here, because that would be amazing, because that storyline is amazing as it is. It's a really cool story for those actually if you haven't had a chance to check out Avengers and New Avengers from Jonathan Hickman.
We should do a reading list. We should do a MCU ATL reading list.
I will say chef's kiss, because that actually is I think I would venture a very strong guess that some of those elements are part of this MCU going forward.
And so two things that I wanted to say. The skipped over this entirely, but and this is a personal thing, so it's just a story I'm sharing. But as you can tell, I have a lot of opinions about things, and part of that is I grew up in a house with two teachers. My dad's an English professor, and my mom's still a second grade teacher down in Miami. And so from a very young age, it's been stories, but it's been talking about stories. And The Matrix is one of my dad's favorite films. My dad has probably watched that movie, and my dad does not watch movies twice. He does not. He doesn't have time. So he does, but he has probably watched The Matrix at least 20 times. I have never seen anything besides Matrix 1. So you're giving me all this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I've seen images of that somewhere. Like,
you've seen the memes. I'm sure you've seen the memes. You've seen the memes.
But I often get upset with things in movies that I'm like, why did they do this? And one of the things my mom would say to like kind of calm me down or whatever, she's like, because it said it in the script, Anna. That's why. So when he hands the script and he's like, this is why, I was just rolling with laughter because I was like, oh, my mom's been right this whole time. It's because it said it in the script. And then the second thing was another very sarcastic thing that me and my group of friends do and my roommates do. Is whenever something is happening, we sarcastically we're like, I love this. And the only thing that we kept saying during this episode was, oh, I love Infinite Crisis. Like, this is literally like, I love Final Crisis. I love the DC comic book stuff. But yeah, it's basically like timelines crashing into each other, everybody's death and destruction. What do you do in that situation? And that's like, and again, that's the macro. The macro is, do we save these people from existence, or do we allow them to live their lives and suffer? And those are questions that I think any single person would absolutely wreck themselves trying to figure out on their own. Which I love superhero genres because it teaches us ultimately how much better we are together, because he made all these decisions on his own. We ended up in this situation because it was just him left at the end. And again, the sadness and the sort of, I don't know, just the tragedy of this man living here at the end of time, past the end of time, for as long as time has ever existed for us, as long as time has ever existed for us, and not just on Earth, but everywhere. This is not a couple thousand years. This is eons and eons and eons and eons. He has lived here by himself, or wouldn't miss minutes, which is even worse than being by yourself. He has lived here by himself this whole time. So that's why when Sylvie's, I think she says something like, "You're not going to fight." She
beg for your life, beg for your life, and he just sort of like, oh yeah, good, yeah. Basically, yeah, sure, I'll go ahead and do that because that's what I want to do.
No, yeah, and he was just like, okay, and then he gets stabbed and he's dying, and he's like, okay, I'll see you soon.
I'll see you later.
Oh, and I did want to say something that so initially I had a big problem with the Infinity Stones in the drawer. In episode 1, it was something that I'm trying to remember if I came in on comments when you guys were doing that and yelled about it, because I might have. I really had a big problem with it, and now in retrospect, I get it. I get it now. I get that they had to literally take the drama, the action, the culmination of everything, because that was the thing. I remember Endgame. I remember being there, watching it with this theater fans, the way that nothing else in movie history has ever culminated, right? Not Star Wars, not everybody in the world was watching this movie, watching this happen, watching the end of this story, and they literally had to take that and put it in a drawer because they're like, no, listen, this isn't Thanos in one universe. This isn't Thanos just in this universe, because when Thanos snapped his fingers, the only thing he affected was this timeline. It was literally just this. This is everything. This is every single timeline, every single universe, every single version of you is now going to be affected by this, by you guys branching the multiverse and allowing Kang to step in. So
I'll be honest, and that's the reason why whenever people have brought up, and actually, and this is it before so Darius and Leonard could speak. This was the reason why whenever people would be like, okay, who's next after Thanos? People would be like, oh, Galactus, and I sit there and I'm like, Galactus is a universal threat. Don't get me wrong. He is not a multiversal threat, and I think, and I always. Even before they announced him in Quantumania, I was just sort of like, to me, the next person is, if you're trying to save the universe, what's the next thing to escalate it? You save multiple universes or multiple timelines, and in that case there's only one person that actually really applies. It's not I think, don't get me wrong, I think Galactus is a great force of nature villain.
Yeah, he would be great to introduce the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, he would be great in that particular aspect. But again, if you really want to set the bar to be like, I'm going to take it to the next level, this is exactly the direction I would have taken, because this is exactly it. Because now you can go ahead and say, this guy is exactly what you're saying, Anna, is like, this guy is, this is small potatoes, one universe and Infinity Stones that basically are worth nothing, that don't work anywhere else.
Right.
Versus
that only work in your one, because my gut punch reaction to that, and I promise I'll be quiet after this too. My gut punch reaction to that, I was incensed. I was mad because so again, as somebody who writes as well as reads, and as well as the conversation that you have with the audience is super important. Like, it's not just that I'm telling this story. I'm telling the story because I want to tell this story, but also because it's a human connection. It's why we write songs. It's why we do everything. And so when they opened this drawer and they had these stones in there, and in particular the Soul Stone, because that's, for me, that's a whole other 2 hours of talking about that. I was upset. I was upset because I was like, you put us through this. You put us through all of this that you put us through in Infinity War, in Endgame, to then shelve this and show how insignificant this chapter was, or how insignificant this sacrifice that Natasha and Gamora both made, because Natasha Romanoff and we go back, and so watching that drawer open, and it's just like, oh yeah, paperweights, they use them as paperweights. I was like, well, and now I get it. So I'm pulling back my ire with Kevin Feige. I will not fight him barehanded in the back of a Denny's, because that was what I said I was going to do. Because it sets it up. It sets it up as absolutely terrifying. Loki, Tom's performance when he finds Mobius and B-15, and he is frantic. He is frantic because he is like, something is coming. It is much worse than anything else that we've ever experienced, and we need to do something because this is going to be bad. And this is somebody who knows Thanos. This is somebody who worked for Thanos. Even 2012 Loki is at that point working for Thanos, or is aware of him. He is terrified of what is coming up, and it's just like, oh no, like, what is coming up? What's going to happen? So anyway, I'm done now. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a testament to the show that just in a couple of episodes, it totally changed your point of view, your opinion on such a critical element. So that's great. Going back to Matrix reference, it's purpose that drives us. It's purpose that defines us. And to a character that everybody has fallen in love with in Sylvie, she's a dog chasing the car that caught the car. Now what?
Right.
She unleashed something that's way bigger than anything that's ever existed. But also, does she have purpose? What happens to her? Does she slip into villain, being a villain now? Does she try to fix her wrongs? That's going to be interesting to pursue. And I think that, they have to pursue that in the second season, right? She's not going to pop up anywhere else. So that's one thing that I actually, when she sat down at the end, it's kind of like, breathe that sigh. That's something that, that popped into my head. Okay, well, what now with her? Being that very driven force for practically the whole series that accomplished her goal. So that's one thing. Darius, did you want to add anything before we wrap up? I know we covered a lot here.
They kind of covered every bloody thing that there is to this thing. Wow.
Oh, there's more. There's always much more. I mean, how about this, Darius? This one. How about Ravona? There you go, man. That story is left.
Her search for free will be interesting in season 2. I'm pretty sure that will be the focus of it, as well as the focus of all the variants that are now. Well, I take it back. Now that this timeline is apparently reset, do the variants go back to being brainwashed, or are any of them now free, as it were? And since now that Irina is now out there, what will she do? I mean, is she infected by what just happened with Kang's release, or as it were? So there's gonna be a lot to look forward to in season 2, and it's gonna be odd. Like, this is like we got the 2 films coming up. How they're gonna balance between Doctor Strange and Spidey, and how Loki season 2 will balance the multiverse out, or try to depict the multiverse out, as it were. I mean, there's so many directions that we're going to just wind up going. God. I mean, this seriously, there is no small pun intended here, but it's literally an infinite amount of possibilities that, because of what just happened here, that they can go with.
Right. I'm Multiverse of Madness, we need you right now. We need answers, and I'm looking forward to seeing Doctor Strange, Loki, and Scarlet Witch on the same screen. No, you're not.
No, wow. I am. I am, but I'm not emotionally ready.
Okay.
Spiritually, I'm not ready. Yeah. Okay.
My body is ready. My body has been ready for a while, and part of that is also after WandaVision, my body was ready, and I love the fact, and I will say this, and I think, pandemic or not, because obviously we have to factor that into the order in which these shows were released, because they weren't intended to be in this order. The fact that this show now leads into the next show, which will be on our Beam stream, by the way, is What If. And What If is, if nothing else, a show about the multiverse. Now we get to see a sideshow that basically says, this is what happens at the end of Loki season 1. Here are the after effects of that. What is this? What are these little? Let's just give you a sample, a little taste of what happens everywhere where these little branches are going.
Right.
That part of it, and I get the impression, I could be wrong, but based on the trailer, I almost get the impression that there will be in that show a through line storyline. I could be wrong. Like, at first I thought it was just going to be a anthology series similar to the book, which is basically just, hey, here's an individual story, here's an individual story. But the fact is that there is one scene in one of the trailers where Captain Carter is speaking to Doctor Strange. And that leads me to believe that perhaps Doctor Strange is maybe this is also ties into the Multiverse of Madness, that this animated version of Doctor Strange is a version that also is hopping around between universes, while as our guide, being Uatu, shows us, hey, this is the universe that's this is the universe that's that, and all that other stuff. That's, if I had to take a guess, that would be what I think is going to happen, or at least some really wishful thinking, but we'll see.
Let's save a little bit of this, because I know that Anna wanted to do a stream breaking down the trailer. We are going to do that, and so let's let's go ahead and save those tidbits for discussion there, probably within the next week or so. That's coming up pretty quick. But okay, let's go ahead and wrap up for today with our review of the final episode, and let's go ahead with the series. Start with Mo.
For the episode, I'm going to give this episode a solid A+. If for nothing else, Jonathan, solid A+. If for nothing else, for Jonathan Major's performance. I know, Anna.
You know what? You didn't see my face. You're gonna play it back when this is done. You're gonna play this back.
I know. I don't have to, because here's the thing. I this is the reason why I appreciate you so much, and why I think is because you and I can sit on two sides of a scale, and you can look at episode 3, and I can look at episode 6, and see the exact same thing in opposite ways, and that to me is fantastic. I love that. Love it. So for me, in the time I've been doing all of these episodes and all of the Disney Plus shows, I think this is one of the rare times again where I've been like, I've watched this episode. I was not only thoroughly entertained, but I was left wanting more. And if you can accomplish to do that, and I will be honest, and this is not actually, I don't think it's a hot take, like Falcon and Winter Soldier didn't leave me wanting more. I was okay with the story as it ended. I didn't need it. I was just sort of like, okay, cool. This is where the story ends. It's cool. WandaVision left me wanting more. Loki left me wanting more. So A+.
Boom.
Excuse me.
Wait, A+ for the series.
Oh, series. Oh, for the series.
So A+ for the episode and A+ for the series, or
no, A+ for the episode, okay. An A for the series. Because again, actually, I like I said, those couple of episodes that I felt were filler episodes. I feel like the show could have been tighter. I feel like this last episode, had this last episode not happened, this show for me would have been a B, no question. This last episode, setting up the MCU going forward, is the feeling I have right now is the feeling I had at Iron Man 1 post credits, when Tony Stark walks into that dark room and there's a guy telling him that there's a bigger universe than you, and that was the first time I was just sort of like, oh my gosh, what is going on?
Right.
That's the feeling that this episode left me with. Oh my, this is gonna be amazing.
I remember, just got a real quick. I mean, with that Nick Fury scene, I remember having a very audible external reaction, and my mom looking at me like, "What's wrong with you, boy?" So
yeah, for me,
I know the feeling. All right, so we gotta have
for me.
Was the gauntlet? Well,
yeah.
Here, you got the floor anyway right now. It's your turn. So.
Oh, yeah. No, I was going to say I'm also one of these people that if you go to the theater with me for any nerd thing, just get ready, because I am not like sit back. I'm in it. Like, I'm in it. For me, that moment of like was fine. I'll do it myself. And he puts his hand into the gauntlet. I was like, what's happening? So for me, the episode is a C-. I had enormous. You just broke the cardinal rule of Zoom calls. You don't show people you're in pajama pants. You know?
These are jogging pants. I'll have you know.
Okay, all right. But no,
how dare you? How dare you?
By the way, I was watching us on the screen, and I'm like, we're already Carla and Turkey here. Like, it was great. Like, I was just staring at you. Like,
you have no idea. I need to go buy some scrubs. Actually, no, I'm gonna go on Amazon. Go ahead and finish your review.
I still have scrubs for Claire. So, no, I give it a C-. I had a lot of issues with the pacing. I had a lot of issues with the speed of it. Hated the kiss. Will forever hate the kiss. Could talk for an hour about how much I hate the kiss. I'm very glad that they announced a season 2, because sincerely, you're saying if this episode hadn't happened, you would have given the show a B. For me, if I had not found out that there was going to be a season 2, I would have seriously considered like my relationship with Marvel movies, because I was just so like utterly, I mean, gutted at the end of this episode for Loki, for a character who, again, in my opinion, has not been treated the very best, like has not been treated very well in terms of storyline, etc. For them to end up in a world where they are unknown, they are entirely unknown by the friends they have just made. They have been kicked through a portal by the one person they trust. Like, not even Thor. They don't even trust Thor, but they trusted Sylvie. And then to end up where their other friend is like, I don't know who you are. It's like, but the show itself receives an A for me. I thought it was fantastic. I think it was in the same way that the WandaVision show had a very clear feeling to it, the same way that Falcon and the Winter Soldier had a very clear feel to it. This had the very clear, zany, cosmic, magic nonsense. I keep thinking about poor Doctor Strange. I'm like pouring one out because he is going to have so much to deal with in the next whatever, installments. But yeah, the series gets an A, the episode gets a C-, and I'll fight Mo later in the parking lot of the Denny's. Yeah.
I'm heading to that Denny's as soon as this is done. Let me grab my weapons.
Let's go.
Oh man. Like I said, I gave the episode an A. I gave the show general A. And what, like the very first episode, we see Loki broken by what his potential actions was. We've seen this character evolve so greatly. Not just from the seeing him play villain / comic relief throughout the MCU films, but then we get him concentrated here, and in the first episode he finally is broken by his actions, and then he begins to form this friendship with Morbius and everything, and then the things progress. And then we're actually turning him into somebody that actually may trust and may love. Granted that he may love himself, but he trusts himself. He trusts and loves a little bit, and becomes an unlikely hero. How he'll be used forward as the multiverse and Kang are now developed, it's going to be interesting to see. And I can't stop thinking about the comparisons to Doctor Who. I mean, like basically, Doctor Who, you have an adventurer who travels through time and keeps changing completely different people. He becomes a woman at one point, most recently. So I basically, you have Loki Who here. So I can't stop thinking about this. That's basically what these writers and these showrunners are completely gearing themselves toward. And basically they are leaning a bit towards many of the fan fiction people who let's face it, they've pretty much overtaken the character completely away from the comic books. It's like all the fan fiction writers have created their own mindset of how Loki should be. And there have been some nice acknowledgments to that, as well as the comic book history of it. I generally enjoyed the show a lot. And like I said, with this final episode, I really cannot wait to see what portends for how the MCU is going to play out. I'm very happy with it.
All right. So personally, I'm going to go ahead and give this episode.
Oh, I gave it an A. Sorry.
Did you give? Sorry. So
I give both everything an A.
A on both.
Yes.
Okay. So for me, I'm going to give it A-. Personally, I was drawn in from the beginning. I love Miss Minutes. I mean, I love that character. I love the jump scare / let's make a deal portion. And they chose what's behind the door instead of taking the cash and leaving. But yeah, the major thing from this episode is what it leads into, which of course is the same thing that B said about the show. The multiverse is exciting. because of all the possibilities. We've known what we've seen, over the course of the years, and genuinely, we don't know what's going to happen. And I'm here for it. I'm looking forward to Doctor Strange, as you mentioned. This guy is the multiversal janitor at this point, but he's seen a lot. I mean, 14 million and 5 possible, outcomes to the battle with Thanos in just a matter of seconds to us in Infinity War. So he's used to it. He's built for it now. I think there's no other person that's more equipped to handle this than him. And I look forward to seeing that, whether it be in what if, whether it be in Spider-Man, and of course in Multiverse of Madness. And this leads perfectly into that. I love the imagery of seeing, at the beginning of the show, the Big Bang, the celestial bodies, the universal bodies, and then at the end, just seeing the branches, and it's just like magic. I'm ready. I'm excited. So definitely, I'm gonna go ahead and give it A+ for the Loki series. Loki is back on top of the MCU as favorite in any iteration, and it's just a good series. I loved it. So, all right, well, we're gonna wrap up.
That's who she reminds me of
today, but it's okay. It was all great conversation, and at least in my opinion. So thank you everybody for sticking with us for an hour and 45 minutes. And those who are going to rewatch later, keep sharing. We're going to see you guys very soon talking about the What If series, and in the future, of course, we got a lot of content coming out in the next year or so. So thank you guys again, and have a great day.
Across the rainbow bridge of Asgard.